In major back-to-back events, Chinese President Xi Jinping seized the opportunity to drive home a key message for greater cause, the need to achieve the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. In his speeches to the Belt and Road Forum for International Cooperation, then at the 2019 Beijing International Horticultural Exhibition, President Xi advocated on behalf of the United Nations and the 17 Sustainable Development Goals that it set. What has China itself done toward achieving this global agenda, and what can China do to help other countries achieve these goals? Earlier, I sat down with Joyce Msuya, an Assistant UN Secretary General and the Acting Executive Director of the UN Environment Programme. I started by asking her about the UN's vision of cooperation with China.
As you know, UN Environment is part of the UN family. And within the UN, globally, we have signed up to and committed to the Sustainable Development Goals. If you look from outside in, by that I mean the work that we need to do to support the countries to achieve Sustainable Development Goals by 2030, the opportunities to make a difference are enormous. The challenges facing the countries that we serve, we call them member states, are daunting in many ways, environment being one of them. The Belt and Road Initiative has the potential to accelerate the achievements toward the Vision 2030. What do I mean by that? We work with all member states, including China. What we are hearing from beneficiaries countries of BRI, they need help in terms of capacity building, in terms of infrastructure investments, in terms of financing. Mm-hmm. The UN can play its role, but it's not going to be enough. All of us need to come together as an international community to support the Vision 2030. And the Belt and Road Initiative is an opportunity to do so. And the initiative was established by China in the spirit of contributing to the Vision 2030. Mm.
Are there any examples or case studies you can share with us at this moment, exactly what you're doing in order to achieve the kind of attentions that you want to pay to investment, to green development, and so on and so forth?
I think one example I would give you, as you know, we're located in Nairobi, Kenya, and I am from Tanzania. If you look at most of the African countries, they do have bilateral engagement, independent of multilateral organizations, on infrastructure investments. In some of the countries that we are working on, we're actually taking stock to try and understand what projects are part of Belt and Road Initiative, mm-hmm. which projects are not part of Belt and Road Initiative. But more fundamentally, is actually looking at the country-specific development plan and say, what are you planning to do to achieve the Vision 2030? And the projects are means to an end to deliver on those goals rather than the end for itself. So I would say in most countries, as a non-resident organization, meaning we're not in every country, we are reviewing what is available, but also we are listening to member countries who would tell us where they need our help.
What kind of information have you gathered so far? I mean, in terms of the proportion of projects under the Belt and Road vis-à-vis the others that are not, that have been there for some time to come. And what are some of these voices that are being expressed to you from these countries about the Belt and Road, the opportunities, the benefits, and the potential concerns, probably?
So what we're hearing, one is excitement to learn more about the Belt and Road Initiative from most beneficiaries countries. What does it mean for them? What does it mean for their development agenda? The second is, because of the financing gaps when it comes to infrastructure investments, there's quite a huge appetite on taking advantage of the financing angle, again from the member states. But also we are hearing, how will they go about managing some of the potential risks that may come with the initiative? For example, in our case, environmental risks. a lot of infrastructure investments have huge dividend when it comes to development and Vision 2030. But we also know if done unsustainable, it can lead to pollution. It can lead to social displacements of people. So we are receiving interest in what have other countries done in addressing some of these risks. So the notion of knowledge sharing, bringing experiences from different countries, that is one. I think the third, what we are hearing, is partnership. Development, environmental challenges have become very multi-sectoral. How do we partner together as one UN, for example, to deliver for the countries to achieve the Vision 2030 objectives? So in summary, there is appetite, there are questions around opportunities as well as risks.
There are some concerns about people from some critics who are saying, look, the infrastructure projects, if they're not done in a sustainable manner, they can have long-lasting negative impacts on the country's ability to achieve their UN sustainable development goals. Do you share these concerns? Is that part of what you're hearing? And are there any mechanism in place or being formed to address those concerns?
The concerns are valid, and we can look at facts and lessons from different parts of the world, that if infrastructure investments are done unsustainable, whether it's using toxic materials to build infrastructure, it can cause human health issues or air pollution. I think what is extremely exciting about the current time is, one, the world is much more interconnected than before. Most of us can sit on the computer and learn from other countries just with a click on the computer. The second is you have organizations such as ours, the UN Environment, the UN, and others that can act as a platform for sharing lessons and experience. And if you look at China, one of the areas, in my view, and experience that China has done very well is learning from other countries, but not just learning, taking the lessons and customize them for the local context, because there is no one size fit all. So the idea really is take the relevant lessons, customize and move forward. I think the last I would add is, from the environment perspective, the time could not have been better to make a difference, whether it's the spirit of the Paris Agreement or the Sustainable Development Goals. The Secretary General is going to have a climate summit, so there is political will and momentum towards pushing the environmental issues forward.
Yeah. Despite the voices of concern, how do you look at the potential, though, of this initiative from the environmental perspective in helping countries achieving their sustainable development goals, in helping overcoming some global challenges such as poverty, inequality, peace and security, and what needs to be done to make sure that these results can be delivered?
I'm an impatient optimist. Coming from Africa and having lived all over the world, including in this country, but also in Asia more broadly, I think the noble cause of us as human beings is about making a difference. This initiative can play a central role in actually catalyzing and speeding up the success for the Vision 2030. What does it mean? There is still work to be done, for example, identifying very specific opportunities and risks at the country level, because that's where the implementation will happen. But also, there are enormous opportunities to learn from each other. There are many countries that have lifted millions of people out of poverty, including China, including other countries. So the question really is, how did they do it? Using infrastructure and or non-infrastructure investments. Two is financing for development agenda is big. It's bigger than the UN. The question is, how do we bring more partners on the table to finance development-focused Vision 2030 projects? And I think lastly is what we have learned in environmental challenges don't have passports. they don't have geographical boundaries. What happens in one part of the world can impact and affect another part of the world.
In terms of environment, what has happened in China, especially the effort to try to clean up the environment, to improve, to restore the ecological system, what kind of impact do you think that's going to have on the rest of the world when we're talking about no border, no passport, and what more needs to be done by China?
Very good question. I mean, as I mentioned to you earlier, I had the opportunity to be a resident in Beijing. And I have been following very, very closely the story of air quality in China, from a personal experience, but also trying to learn as part of my job. I think it's very important to understand the key drivers behind the success. And those are the lessons that we as UN family are keen to take on. One is, for example, the political will, the vision to actually drive cleaning of air. The second is being transparent about it. By that I mean releasing the PM 2.5 data and allow citizens to take part in monitoring their own air quality and provide feedback mechanisms from the citizens to the governments. The third is the partnership. I met with some officials here yesterday and talk about geographical boundaries, and they told me they couldn't control air pollution problem just in Beijing. They had to talk to Tianjin, to Hebei, to see how the different provinces. Those are the kinds of across-the-border partnerships that we are talking about. I think lastly is learning from others. I visited the center that monitors the PM 2.5, and they informed me they were looking at how other industrialized countries, the high-income economies, have learned to try and replicate the relevant lessons for China. So it's good to see, for example, from 2013, when I was actually here, to 2018, the enormous progress on PM 2.5.
Unfortunately, as we speak, it's not very good. It's a smoggy day. So what else do you think China needs to do or continue doing?
I think China needs to capitalize on its gains so far and not be complacent. I'm very optimistic that China will continue to build on its gains. Why? Because one, citizens are engaged. And citizens
are concerned. We're paying attention to it.
Correct.
Intensively.
So I think one is really speeding up. Two, I would say the fourth industrial revolution, the artificial intelligence, the sensors offer opportunities to actually add technology for efficiency in monitoring air quality. And then lastly, I would say partnerships, continuing to learn from other countries that have done well to speed up the progress.
That was Joyce Msuya, an Assistant UN Secretary General and Acting Head of the UN Environment. And with that, we come to the end of this edition of The Point with me, Lu Xin. As always, you can follow me on Facebook and Twitter using the handle The Point with LX. Download the application called CGTN to watch the show on your mobile devices, or go to YouTube and look for CGTN The Point. Thanks for watching. You've got The Point.